G'day! How are you doing? Hopefully keeping healthy and safe. I've just got my blood test results back and all came good, so I'm doing pretty good on this side of the desk. Today we're going to have a look into this Acer Predator Triton 500 SE. It's a 16-inch flagship gaming laptop from Acer. And this is the 2022 model, so it's powered by the 12th gen Intel Core H series performance processor. That's great. And of course, we're going to have a look at the features. We're going to have a look at the temperatures, fan noise, look at the internals. And as always, I will be putting timestamps along this video so you can skip to a different section if you may be interested to save you time. So let's get this show on the road. Look at the ports. Starting on the left-hand side of the laptop, we have the audio jack, Thunderbolt 4 port, USB Type A port, which is USB 3.2 Gen 2, an RJ45 Ethernet port, and an AC power port. There's no ports on the rear, just the exhaust vents. Look at the right hand side of the laptop, we have the full-size HDMI port, which is version 2.1, Thunderbolt 4 port, another USB Type A port, and a full-size SD card reader. The display is a 16-inch wide quad extended graphics array display with a matte finish and has very narrow bezels on the side and pretty narrow bezels on the top. And it also has a very fast refresh rate of 240 Hz. It has an aspect ratio of 16:10, and when I measured the maximum brightness of the display, it managed to result with 494 nits of brightness or candela per square meter. And when I measured the color gamut coverage of the display, it resulted with 99.8% sRGB coverage, 80.9% Adobe RGB coverage, and 96.3% DCI-P3 coverage. This is very respectable color gamut coverage. This display could be used for photo and video editing. I'm going to dive a little bit more in the brightness settings on the display. So in the brightness setting in Windows, I've got a value of 23, which will get us about 110 candela per square meter or 110 nits. And if we set it to about 27 or 26, you get around about 120 candela per square meter, which is between the range of the 110 and 120 is good for photo and video editing. So that's just the brightness settings there. And if you go down to around about 49, you're looking at 200 candela per square meter, which is what I set for the battery test. And then as you remove the brightness setting a little bit up, you will actually get to observe how the brightness setting is. Now, I have noticed that it is very linear as we move up the range of the brightness setting, which is quite nice to see because unusually a lot of the very bright displays are around about after about 80%, it then just jumps massively. Now in this display, it doesn't do that, which is really good to see. There are 4 speakers in total in the Triton 500 SE. There are 2 above the keyboard, which are top firing, and there are 2 on the bottom side of the computer, on the bottom front, on either side, which are bottom firing speakers. Now, when I tested at the maximum volume of the speakers, it managed to measure in a peak of 84 decibels. Now, I will actually consider this on the quiet end of compared to other laptops. So I would say the upper quiet end. So if you're in a noisy environment, you do find this have a little bit of more hard hearing when you're in outdoors doing presentation. But as for the sound quality of the speakers, we do have some bass that does get low, but it's not very powerful, oomphy bass. We've got very strong mids and highs. And as for the acoustics, these speakers are like very crisp and punchy. It's very clear. You do hear 360 degrees around the laptop, but I personally like to hear a little bit more reverb from the speakers. But overall, sound quality is not too bad at all, but I would like to see improvement in the volume of the speakers considering this is quite a large laptop, so it should be able to handle a little bit larger size speakers. This is a recording from the 1080p webcam from the Predator Triton 500 SE. This is the video and audio unedited so you can hear and see what the quality of the webcam is like. Now first, I'd like to acknowledge it's great to see that Acer put a 1080p webcam, knowing that we're in 2022, and also it helps out for those who do live streaming and do a lot of video conferencing as well, and also content creation. It's great to see they put a nice 1080p webcam in a laptop like this. Now, I'm in environment with two types of lights currently turned on. I've got my one studio light turned on, and also the down lights in this room turned on for ambience. I'm going to turn off my one studio light off and see this adjust, and I think it adjusted pretty well and pretty quick. And the two downlights in front of me is a bit far away, so there's not much light hitting on my face. This is what I consider a dark environment. If you're in an office environment, you should have much more light than one I'm currently at. I'm going to turn on the studio light back on. You'll see this adjust, and I think it adjusted pretty well. And I have to say that seeing the quality of the camera, as well as the video quality, as well as the colors and the white balance that comes out from this webcam, I think it's doing extremely well, and also how it reacts with the light as well too. I think it's doing pretty good, but I'd love to hear what your thoughts of this webcam. Put a comment below. The weight of the Triton 500 SE is 2.32 kilos, plus the 230 watt power adapter becomes a combined weight of 3.1 kilos that you might be carrying around with you. Acer have put in a large 99 watt hour battery in this gaming laptop, and I managed to get 7 hours and 43 minutes for the modern office battery life test in PC Mark 10, 1 hour and 35 minutes for gaming, and 8 hours in the video playback in the Procon battery life test. For me, if you dial down the display to about 25% of the maximum brightness, around about 120 nits, you should be able to get all day battery life on this laptop. If you're just working on Office or even just browsing the web and just doing some video conferencing calls, you should be okay, which I think is above average for the battery life test for a gaming laptop. Looking at temperatures and fan noise, when I took my measurement, my ambient temperature in the room was 26 degrees Celsius. The ambient room noise was 35 decibels. Now, before we get started, I'll just give you a reference point. Your hand is about 34 degrees Celsius. Hopefully, it gives you an idea how hot or how cool this laptop could be. So I took my base measurement when the computer was idle, and the hottest area on the keyboard measured in at 36 degrees Celsius. And as for the fan noise, it hit a maximum of 36 decibels as well. And the average internal core temperature was 38 degrees Celsius. Then I put 20% load on the computer, so that's tasks like office productivity work, streaming video, surfing the web, and the hottest area on the keyboard measured a maximum of 38 degrees Celsius. And as for the fan noise, it stayed at 36 decibels, and the average internal core temperature was 45 degrees Celsius. Then I put 50% load on the computer, and the hottest area on the keyboard measured a maximum of 43 degrees Celsius. And as for the fan noise, at a maximum of 38 decibels, and the average internal core temperature was 57 degrees Celsius. Then I put 100% load on the computer, and the hottest area on the keyboard measured a maximum of 45 degrees Celsius. And as for the fan noise, it spun it all the way up to 48 decibels, and the average internal core temperature was 74 degrees Celsius. Then I turned on turbo mode, so letting the fan spin it at its maximum, and the hottest area on the keyboard measured a maximum of 46 degrees Celsius. And as for the fan noise, hit a maximum of 54 decibels, and the average internal core temperature was 91 degrees Celsius. I also measured the bottom back cover while the computer had 100% load, and the hottest area on back cover was 46 degrees Celsius. When you place this computer in turbo mode, you definitely hear these fans go off. Let's have a look at the processor performance over long duration tasks for the Predator Triton 500 SE. This particular unit is configured for an i7 12700H processor, and looking at Intel website reports that this processor has a maximum turbo boost of 4.7 GHz. And Windows reports this processor has a 2.7 GHz as a base clock speed. So we want to see this processor running at least 2.7 GHz. Now I've got this computer connected to mains power and set to turbo mode to give it the best performance and letting the fans run at its maximum course. And I've got a lot of load, pretty much 100% running on the processor, memory and storage, and a bit of load on the graphics as well. So that's the integrated graphics and the discrete graphics, and this is over 6.5 hours, this load. And I can see from the speed of the processor, it's pretty much ranging anywhere between 2.6 to about 3.5 gigahertz. So, and it pretty much ranges. It does take a little bit of break in between, and you'll see it fluctuates, but mostly it does try to keep above the 3 gigahertz. So seeing that it does dip sometimes to about 2.6 gigahertz only for flash, there is a bit of thermal throttling happening just for a very slight thing, but then it brings it back up quite happily above the base clock speed and going a little bit. As you see, it's just dipping a little down there, but it try and holds it best at 3 gigahertz and above. It's just saw that how it just dips very quickly and then it goes back up to hopefully about 3.3 to about 3.4 gigahertz. And that is what I say, doing very well. And of course, the internal core temperatures is sitting at 89 degrees Celsius. So still there is a bit of headroom for thermals to go over, but it is trying to keep it safeguarded at the moment. Looking at the keyboard, we definitely have a different style of keyboard compared to other gaming laptops on the market. We don't have the number pads, which actually makes the keyboard very centered in this laptop, which actually is a very aesthetically pleasing. What makes this keyboard different is that the keys have a very relatively soft bounce or recoil to each individual key. It still holds very good key travel, and they are relatively quiet. Very different to your very clicky and tactile feel keyboards in gaming laptops, and they have what I say a smaller size keys compared to other gaming laptops I've seen, and have very large spacing in between each individual keys, yet it also maintains a very smooth texture to each key. The keyboard is RGB backlit, and there are 3 zones which you can actually configure the RGB backlight in the Predator Sense application. And there are 4 settings to the backlighting of the keys: off, low, medium, and high. Looking at the trackpad, it is pretty much located in the center of the palm rest, which is very different to see, so it's aesthetically pleasing to see it symmetrical. We do have a very smooth glass texture to the trackpad, and it is also mechanical, so it's hinged at the top and you can depress it as you move further down. It is also multi-gesture as well. I didn't have any issues depressing or having it registering my touches, even with moist fingers. And there is also a fingerprint scanner located on the top left of the trackpad. So how's the build construction of this Triton 500? Now I know some of you guys love when I do this flex tech, so let's do that. Let's flex this thing. Oh, just try and twist this thing. Flex, bend, doesn't really do. It's actually very solid. That hasn't really done so much. And let's see how the keyboard is. There's not much flex in the keyboard. They've got very good structure in the chassis. Actually hold quite a bit of a beating and taking a bit of pressure. And we'll just quickly do the one finger test for see how the hinge is, and that is very easy, and it is extremely smooth and the same pressure all the way through, and opens up to what I would say, it's not 180 degrees, I would say it's 175 degrees, pretty much 180 degrees, which is rare for some of these gaming computers to do that, especially in this sort of model, it's a 16-inch model. And I can see there's actually quite a nice bit of gap in between the base of the computer and the display, so letting the exhaust be obstructed free so it can actually escape that really hot air and try and take care of the display as well. So that's good to see. And I'm just going to quickly just do a really interesting what I call a wobble test for the display, because as long as it doesn't do this wobbling, which means it is a bit of structure in the display to try and keep some more protection and structure for the LCD display, or in this case it's actually IPS display, but it is very nice to see that it is very well constructed. And I'll just do the wobble test again for this one for those who actually want to know. Now it does clamp and then lets go just a little tad, but it doesn't really let go and doesn't wobble, so that's forgivable for that, because especially it is a very smooth opening for one finger test here, so that's doing pretty good. Well built for this Triton 500 SE. Good job, Acer. Here's the results of the benchmarks. This Predator Triton 500 SE was configured with an i7-12700H processor with 16 gigs RAM, 1TB SSD, and also the Geforce RTX 3070 Ti. Here's the results for Passmark, Citybench R23, PC Mark, 3D Mark, Geekbench 5, Crystal Disk Mark, Procon Office, Procon Photo Edit, Procon Video Edit, Fusion Photoshop, Fusion Lightroom, Fusion Premiere Pro, Fusion After Effects, Fusion DaVinci Resolve, Blender, Furmark, Luxmark, Octane Bench, Eugene Engine, and Spec View Prep. and some gaming benchmarks like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Far Cry 6, Cyberpunk 2077, and F1 2021. Looking at results of the benchmarks, this is a very top performing laptop for its specs. Let's have a look at internals. First off, need to unscrew the 9 Torx screws. So you do need a Torx screwdriver to actually unscrew the screws. And then my advice is to actually pry this open, start from the Ethernet port, and then move your way across, and then Ethernet port, move the way across. Now, I pre-undid this to speed up time, and we can see the large 99 watt-hour battery at the very bottom here, and then we've got the battery connected down here as well. Now, this being taped up tells you one thing, and you'll see from a bit of a hint as we look in the internals, is this computer is not really designed really for you to actually open up. There's not really much you can do with it as well, as there's no memory slots, as that is integrated and soldered to the system board. So make sure you actually select the correct amount of memory when you purchase this, as you can't upgrade later. And the same with the storage. As you see, we don't have any M.2 slots to actually upgrade or add in more additional storage. And the only really take note of is really there's the Wi-Fi Bluetooth module here. Now, unlike a lot of other gaming computers that's been on this channel, they're either dual or quad fan system. This is a tri-fan system. So 2 that runs the GPU and 1 for the CPU. Very different. And also, just take note of, it's really nice to see the extra, a lot of the heat shielding material on this system board to try and stop the heat at the bottom here. Overall, the Predator Triton 500 SE performance is right up there with the big boys. Definitely a podium performance from this machine. It's crazy. Once you hit that turbo button, you definitely hear this thing off. It's like a manual car, you feel it. But the good thing is, at least you can actually calm this computer down, because Acer's given the ability to turn down that fan if you so wish. So that's absolutely fantastic there. We've got very nice selection of ports and where they're located for what I think they are. We've also got a very nice display, very quick and color accurate display, and surprisingly the keyboard is a little different compared to other gaming laptops. It does have what I call a soft and quieter keyboard compared to a lot of the other gaming laptops on the market. So if you want something a little bit more quiet while you're gaming rather than the really clicky feel and the loud sounds, this is something different on the market that you might be interested in. And we definitely have a very nice trackpad, and the speakers, we could deal with a little bit more volume from the speakers, but at least they are very clear and good sounding speakers. And I hope you find this video informative or enjoyed it. If you did, even to support my channel, smash that like button for me. And if you haven't done already, subscribe to my channel by hitting the subscribe button on the screen. I do try to upload a new video every week. And if you want to help me even further, click on that join membership as well. Try to do a little extra for those guys there. And as always, imperfections in life makes it beautiful and interesting. And I'll see you next video.